Hi, welcome back to my YouTube channel and welcome to Bookmas. This is my first ever Bookmas video that I am filming, and for the first video we are going to be doing my November reading wrap up. In the month of November I read 16 books total, 5 of them being romance, 3 of them being fiction, 6 of them being fantasy, and 2 of them being thriller. And 1 5-star read in there. Let's just dive into my ratings, my reviews, my thoughts on all of these books that I read in November. And let me quickly apologize in advance for my voice. I am currently sick with a cold, kind of lost my voice. I am very, very congested, but I don't normally sound like this, so if that is deterring you from subscribing, don't let it. And let's just get to talking about these 16 books. The first book that I read in November was The Cinnamon Bun Bookstore by Lori Gilmore. This is the second book in the Dream Harbor series, the first book being The Pumpkin Spice Cafe, and this book is about Hazel and Noah. Hazel has lived in small town Dream Harbor her whole life, and Noah is like fairly new. He's moved here a few years ago. He's the fisherman in town. Hazel just runs the bookstore, and she is approaching her 30th birthday, and she's like, I need to do something crazy and fun before I'm in my 30s because I've never done anything crazy and fun my whole life. So Noah offers to help her out with that, helps her with this scavenger hunt that is going on in the bookstore, and they end up having a summer fling, which that brings me to the point of my biggest issue with this book is that looking at the cover, you're like, oh, beautiful fall leaves, like literally foiled. It's a fall book, right? Nope, it takes place in the summer. Like, why would you do that? That is just false advertising to me, and I feel like nowhere on the back it says it takes place in the summer. So just do not go into this book thinking it's a fall read, even though the cover screams fall and there's nothing on the back that tells you it wouldn't be in the fall. Honestly, this book was pretty meh, just like the first book was for me, but I had heard that this book was better, so I wanted to give it a shot, and to me it was not better. Literally fell just as flat as the first book did for me. The characters were alright, their romance was alright, the spice was honestly very, very repetitive. Whenever there was a spice scene, I would usually skip it because it would be several pages, and it's like, I don't care at this point. If spice is not written well, I'm not gonna read it, but if the spice is done well, I am a fan. Overall, there's nothing really special about this book. I feel like this whole series is very overhyped and really just only loved for the covers of the book, which I agree, the covers are very beautiful. I love the fall vibes of the covers. The first book does take place in the fall, but this one does not. So why is it being shown as a fall book? I would say maybe you could read it as a fluffy little palette cleanser, because I did get through this very, very quickly, in a few short sittings, but I'm also maybe don't waste your time on this series. I'm very honest when it comes to my reviews. If I am not obsessed with a book, I'm not really gonna recommend it. But this was alright. So I would say if you enjoyed the first book in the series, you're probably going to enjoy this one as well. But for me, who didn't enjoy the first book, this was just okay. The next book I read was another romance book. This is If Love Had a Price by Anna Huang. This is the third book in the If Love Interconnected Standalone series. This one follows Chris, who is one of the friends from the friend group from the first 2 books. And Chris is the spoiled daughter of a billionaire, so when her father gets engaged to a young gold digger, Chris wants to do anything she can to stop this wedding from happening. And she decides that the best way to do that is to hire an actor to basically pretend to seduce her soon-to-be stepmother so that she can get proof that her stepmother is cheating on her father. She ends up hiring Nate, who is an aspiring actor in LA. He doesn't have very much money, and Chris is offering him a lot of money for this little gig that he plays. And in good old Anna Huang fashion, there are some twists at the end. This book was definitely a fun palette cleanser of a read. I would definitely recommend it for that aspect. I definitely enjoyed this a lot more than the last romance that I read. But it is not in any means my favorite Anna Huang book. I really enjoyed how Chris and Nate's relationship evolved from sort of a dislike to eventually love. They come from very different worlds, obviously. Like I said, Chris is a billionaire, and then Nate does not have a lot of money. His mom passed away a few years ago, and after that, his dad has become very absent, has been drinking a lot, and his younger sister is still in high school, so he's trying to be able to support his whole family financially on like an aspiring actor's pay. It definitely has its Anna Huang spicy moments, but this one also has very sweet moments between Chris and Nate, which I really, really appreciate. Sometimes I need just a sweet romance book, not all spice, and this is definitely that. I do really like Chris and Nate together. So I would definitely recommend the If Love series by Anna Huang. I still have one more book to read, but so far the first 3 books have been pretty good. Angel Falls by Kristen Hanna. This is a classic tearjerker Kristen Hanna novel. This one is about Michaela and Liam's family after Michaela falls into a coma after a horse riding accident, and Liam is just pretty lost without his wife, honestly. He has 2 kids that they've raised together, and he just does not know what to do without his wife, which I think is very valid. And on top of Liam already kind of grieving Michaela since she's in this coma, already lost without her, he finds out some juicy stuff about Michaela's past and her ex-husband. And Liam ends up having to ask this ex-husband for help to wake Michaela up because of these things we find out about her past and how she feels about her ex-husband. Unfortunately, asking this ex-husband for help could cost Liam his whole life that he loves, his wife, his family, his children. Like, he could lose it all. I will tell you, I devoured this book. I literally started it and then finished it in the same day, so if that doesn't tell you I liked it and enjoyed it, I don't know what does. I honestly feel like after every chapter, I was left wondering what else was going to happen, what else we were going to find out, so I really enjoyed that it was able to grab my attention like that most of the time. It was definitely a very emotional story. I definitely cried a few times just because Liam is so sad and lost, and now he feels like his life and his marriage has kind of been a lie and a sham. But I love a good story about family, especially now after I'm married and thinking about starting my own family soon. Like, this just hit me in the heart. It's definitely a beautiful story about family strength and bonds that can never be broken. The Serpent and the Wings of Night. You guys, I am just going to say this right away. This is overhyped, for me at least. This is an enemies to lovers vampire romantasy where the main character is actually human, but she's been raised by vampires, and now she is participating in these trials where if she wins, she wants to like ask to be turned to vampire. And then she starts training with the male main character of this book who is also participating in these trials. So it's enemies to lovers because they're basically fighting against each other in the trials, but while they're training together, romance blooms. This was honestly just pretty boring to me for like 90% of the book. It really didn't pick up until the end. And I will say, I did like the ending. Because of the ending, I will continue the rest of the series to find out what is going to happen. But oh my gosh, this book took me like 2 weeks to finish because I did not want to pick it up. I just dreaded picking it up, honestly, because I was like, I have to force myself to push through it because it's so boring. I don't care about what's going on. And it put me in a slump. But yeah, I feel like I honestly could have read like Spark Notes on this book and that would have been so much better. A Torch Against the Night. This is the second book of the Ember in the Ashes series. Obviously, I can't say too much about this one without giving a lot of the plot points from book 1 away. But I am very excited to see what is going to end up happening with all of the characters in this book. We have Leia and Elias and Helene. They were all off on their own adventures, doing their own thing throughout this book, but honestly, I didn't really mind it. It was kind of fun, and then it did all come like full circle at the end. Like I said, I'm really excited to pick up the next book of this series and see what else is going to happen. I have 2 more books, so I'm kind of scared because there are some very big things that could still happen. The Book Eaters. This is a very unique story that takes place in our world, but like in our world, there are these creatures called Book Eaters. Basically, they're almost exactly like humans, look just like humans, but instead of eating food, they eat books for their sustenance, and then they know all of the information that was in the book after eating it. Now, in this world, there are also these anomalies among book eaters called mind eaters, and it sounds like what it is. These creatures, instead of eating books, eat human minds. And our main character, who is a book eater, has a mind eater son, so throughout the book, she is trying to get her hands on the cure for her 5-year-old son, so he doesn't have to keep living his life that he is living of having to eat human minds. I absolutely loved the first 3/4 of this book. Like I said, very unique premise. I feel like the ending could have been so much better, but it didn't really go the way I thought it would have gone. Still very enjoyable, kept me intrigued the whole way. And let me say, this book had so many more sad moments, had me feeling so many sad emotions while reading it that I was not expecting. And that is because these book eater women, they are definitely oppressed. They are forced into arranged marriages with other book eaters to keep the lines clean. And there is also things about these marriages and motherhood that are very disgusting and should not be happening to women. And I really loved how it did flashbacks of our main character growing up, going through marriages and motherhood, so that you really have an idea and know why she is fighting so much for her 5-year-old son to have this cure. I would still definitely recommend this, even though I didn't absolutely love the ending. Forever Interrupted by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This book is about Elsie, who has just married Ben, and literally days after getting married, Ben tragically dies in an accident. He was actually going to the store to buy something for Elsie, gets hit by a truck, and dies. Elsie is obviously devastated, but she goes through the book kind of recounting meeting Ben and their relationship, and even though they were only together for a very short amount of time, she is kind of wondering if she deserves to be grieving the way that she is, even though she's only known Ben for 6 months before getting married. This is a very beautiful romance and healing journey that Elsie goes through, and also kind of found family. I really enjoyed this, but I will say this is definitely not the best Taylor Jenkins Reid's writing style. This is one of her earlier books, so that can be expected, but the writing was very simple, the dialogue was very simple, didn't have much depth to it, but I think the characters are all well-rounded. I absolutely love the story of Elsie and Ben. It had me so emotional. This could be because I am recently married, and obviously imagining myself losing my husband right now would be terrible. It had me crying right off the bat, the first page, bawling my eyes out. And it could also be due to the fact that Ben's character just reminded me so much of my own husband. They're both so sweet, would do anything for their wives, and I ate it up. I probably cried to at least half of this book, and I would recommend it, but I would just warn you going into it knowing that the writing style isn't the absolute best. The Secret History by Donna Tartt. I don't even know where to begin with this one. It's told from Richard's point of view while he is recounting the disappearance of Bunny. Richard is a college student who joins this Greek class, and this class only has 5 other students in it, being Bunny, Henry, Francis, Charles, and Camilla, and now of course Richard. Those first 5 are kind of in their own little friend group, and then they kind of join Richard into it. And those other 4 students, Charles, Camilla, Francis, and Henry, all want Bunny out of the picture because they did something very terrible, and Bunny found out about it and is kind of holding it over their heads now. Somehow Richard gets wrapped up in all of this, even though he was not involved in what the other 4 did. And what comes of Bunny and what comes after will haunt Richard forever. This book is basically what started the whole dark academia genre of books, and I talk about this book a lot in my dark academia reading vlog, so make sure to check that video out if you want in-depth thoughts and my review on this book while I'm reading it. This book was definitely a good story. I really enjoyed the whole premise of it, but it was so dragged on, and it felt like I was doing an assignment for high school while reading it. While I wasn't super interested in the first half when it's like talking about why they want Bunny dead and how they're gonna kill him and what they're gonna do, just because again it was so dragged on, I was very intrigued to start the second half of the book, where it's kind of like the aftermath, like what is going to happen after Bunny is gone, how is it going to affect all these characters. So I would definitely recommend it to kind of get jump started on your dark academia journey, just because, like I said, it is what kind of started the genre. Mile High by Liz Tomford. This is the first book in the Windy City series about Xanders and Stevie. Xanders is a professional hockey player, and then Stevie is one of the flight attendants for his like travel games. Now, while Xanders is a hockey player, he is also like a player, like a womanizer. And he would like nothing more than to win Stevie over. And Stevie is definitely hard to get. Like, she doesn't really want to just be hooking up with him. She doesn't really want him to win. And also there's like no talking, no being friends with, no being in a relationship with the flight attendants and the hockey team. So she's like, I could literally lose my job if something happens between us. But Xanders just keeps on pushing. This book was so fun. I did not want to put it down. I was just patiently waiting for Xanders and Stevie to finally get together. I loved the sneaking around. I loved the character development and just like why we find out that the characters do the things that they do because of what has happened in their past and in past relationships. Like the Xanders at the beginning of the book and the Xanders at the end of the book are polar opposites. And Stevie, who didn't feel much self-worth in the beginning of the book because of a past relationship, feels so confident, loves herself because of how she has now been loved by Xanders. My only complaint about this book is the miscommunication throughout it and then the miscommunication at the end. Like, both of these characters are so stubborn, but overall, I did love this book. The Right Move, this is the second book in the Windy City series, and this book is about Ryan and Indy. Now, Ryan is the brother of Stevie from the first book, and then Indy is Stevie's co-worker from the first book. Indy is looking for a cheap place to live because she just went through a terrible breakup, and she is also trying to save up for fertility treatments, so like she really can't afford that expensive of rent. And Ryan is a closed-off professional basketball player who lives in a beautiful apartment all by himself, and he reluctantly agrees after Stevie is begging him to. Now, upon moving in together, Ryan and Indy realize that they can kind of mutually benefit from fake dating. For Ryan, it is because his general manager doesn't see him as like family-focused and how he should be for being the team captain. So Ryan is like, okay, if I have a girlfriend, that'll make me look better to my general manager. And then Indy is like, my friend of 20 years is getting married and my ex is going to be there with a +1, so I need a +1, and it would be great if a professional basketball player was my +1. But let me tell you, the lines between real and fake get very blurred in this book. I loved this book. It has fake dating, which is one of my favorite tropes. I loved both of these characters, especially Indy, because she has imagined her life going one way for a long time because she was with her boyfriend for so long, and then she just had the rug pulled from beneath her. Seeing her growth throughout the book and realizing her self-worth was so beautiful. Ryan is the perfect book boyfriend to do so. And while Ryan does have his own trauma of his own that he's trying to work through, he doesn't really like to talk about it, but he is such a good communicator. He would seriously do anything for the ones that he loved, and it shows. Oh my gosh, I love this. I cannot wait to read the rest of the series, because if the rest of the books are just as good as this one, it might be one of my new favorite series. A Study in Drowning by Ava Reed. I also read this one in my Dark Academia reading vlog, and this one is about Effie, who is a student at a university, and she gets offered this chance to like participate in remodeling her favorite author's manor, and she's an architecture student, so it makes sense. This manor happens to be falling into the sea because the second drowning is upon them. While at the manor, she meets another student, Preston. He's a literature student, and he is there for a very different reason, and that is to discredit Effie's favorite author. Effie and Preston start working together, and they discover some dark secrets about this author and his stories. But they also discover some truth about themselves and their feelings for each other. This book is so cool. I felt so immersed in the story, and it is one of the coolest plots I have ever read. The romance was very sweet, the stakes were very high, and the ending had my head spinning. Enough said. The Teller of Small Fortunes. This one is about a traveling fortune teller, and one day while she's traveling, she comes across this group of misfits and finds out that one of them is actually searching for his lost daughter. So our fortune teller tells his fortune, and she sees that he is reunited with his daughter eventually. So throughout the book, she is kind of banding up with this group that she finds to help him find his daughter. I thought that this book was very cute, cozy, heartwarming. It definitely has some higher stakes, like finding the lost daughter and also just trouble that they find along the way while traveling. I would definitely recommend it as a palate cleanser. It's a very quick and easy read, but I don't think it's something that's going to stick with me. The Blue Hour by Paula Hawkins. This was my book club pick for the month, so if you want to listen to me yap about this book for an hour with my sister-in-law, make sure to go follow our podcast on Spotify, the Chapter Chats podcast. This one is about James Becker, who works for this art gallery, and at one of the showings, an issue comes up where someone looks at one of these art pieces on display, and they're basically like, the bone that is used in this art piece is not an animal bone like we have thought for years and years. It is actually human bone. The kicker with that is that this artist, Vanessa Chapman, she had a cheating ex-husband, and he went missing around the same time when she created this artwork. So obviously that raises some red flags and concerns. So James Becker is basically assigned to go meet with Grace, who after Vanessa has passed away, Grace was her companion for 20 years, so she gave Grace the house. So James Becker goes to meet with her to get some insight on Vanessa's life and figure out if the bone is actually her ex-husband or not. This book had a very dark and sinister aspect to it. I would say almost all of the characters, and there are a lot of characters introduced in this book, all have something kind of dark and mysterious around them. I don't fully trust any of these characters. There are twists and turns throughout this whole book that had my heart beating out of my chest, and I really loved probably the first 3/4 of this book. I thought the pacing was very well done. But then toward the end of the book, everything just seemed really rushed. There was all this information being thrown at you, and you as the reader have whiplash because it's a lot of information to take in a short amount of time before something else is being thrown at you. I also didn't like the ending. Not that it's an unsatisfying ending, but I just wish it wouldn't have happened the way that it happened. I really enjoyed this, and I would still recommend it, even though I didn't love the ending. But if you read the book, you would understand why I don't like the ending, but why it's still a satisfying ending. In Education and Malice, also read this one for my Dark Academia reading vlog. This one is about Laura and Carmilla, who are students at this university, and they're in this poetry class together. Laura is a new student, and Carmilla is a senior, I think. So when Laura starts getting a ton of praise, Carmilla is definitely jealous and feels like she should be getting that praise. So their dynamic is definitely kind of like rivals at first, but due to something that happens to Carmilla later in the book because of a supernatural monster at the school, she kind of has to take Laura on as her companion, and it turns into a budding romance. So, along with their romance, Laura and Carmilla are teaming up to try and get to the bottom of this supernatural monster at their school and try and get rid of it. I really wish the whole paranormal, supernatural aspect in this book would have happened a lot earlier, because there was none of it until 100-some pages. I didn't even know what this book was about until then, because the first 100 or so pages was just Carmilla and Laura in this poetry class together taking jabs at each other. Like, I didn't care about that. But when the paranormal stuff came into play, I definitely started enjoying it a little bit more. I definitely enjoyed Carmilla and Laura's romantic relationship. But the whole actual, like, monster hunting thing fell extremely flat for me. The end plot twist, I was not surprised at all. But this is based off the classic vampire story Carmilla, so maybe if I would have had prior knowledge of that or known about that story, I would have enjoyed it more. I'm not sure. Lost and Lassoed by Lila Sage. This is the third book in the Rebel Blue Ranch series, and this one is about Teddy and Gus. Teddy is the best friend of the main character from book 1, and then Gus is the brother of the main characters from book 1 and book 2. Teddy and Gus have always hated each other because Gus really dislikes Teddy because he just always, or she got his little sister in trouble all the time when they were growing up. But Teddy is just like a happy-go-lucky, very extroverted, and loved by the rest of the town. Gus is a single dad, and his ex, who is the mother of his child, is out of town for the summer because she is currently taking classes, and Gus really needs help because usually, like, their co-parenting is on top. It is amazing, but now without her, he is running the ranch alone. He is trying to take care of his daughter alone, so he hires Teddy as his nanny because Teddy is recently out of a job. This is officially my favorite book of the Rebel Blue Ranch series. There's still one more book coming out, but I feel like this one is going to take the cake because it is enemies to lovers, it is single dad, and Teddy and Gus are just perfect for each other, and they stole my heart. They're so funny together, like their banter, because obviously they're enemies, they don't like each other, but then they come to like each other, so they're still really funny with each other, but also so understanding of each other's needs. Like, they don't even have to say what they're thinking, what they're feeling, what they want. The other person just knows. And the spice was phenomenal. I don't know what it is with me and single dads, but I eat it up every single time. If you like Heartless by Elsie Silver, you're gonna eat this up. And the last book that I read in November is The Surrogate Mother by Frida McFadden. This one is about Abby, who has been trying to have a baby with her husband Sam for quite a few years now, and nothing is working. They've tried fertility treatments, they've tried adoption, and they were just weeks away from adopting a newborn baby boy when that fell through. So Abby is feeling particularly devastated after this last occurrence, and at work, her assistant, Monica, sees how upset she is, and she offers to be a surrogate for Abby. But, like, not a surrogate for Abby and Sam, because Abby's eggs don't work. I don't know, like, the actual medical aspect of it. So it would basically be Sam and the assistant, Monica, having a baby together, and then Sam and Abby would adopt that baby. So Sam and Abby are both very, very hesitant at first. They're like, no, this is definitely, like, weird, but they've wanted a baby for so long and they can't do it on their own, so they agree. And that's where the nightmare begins. This is a super quick, fast-paced read. I literally read it in one sitting, but it's not my favorite Frida McFadden. I was surprised by some of the reveals in this book, but definitely not surprised by the major plot twist at the end. Like, that one I had called pretty early on. I would recommend it for a fun little thriller palette cleanser, but it is nothing substantial. If you made it to the end, thank you so much for listening to me yap about all of these books that I read in November. I truly appreciate it. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, and please subscribe to my YouTube channel so you can be updated on all of my Bookmas videos and all of the videos that I have planned for after that. I will see you in the next video. Bye!